South Africa, obviously. Then I've been to Vienna, and that's just a lot of kicks through that journey. And I'm now tipping the scales at 72 kgs, which is as
that
heavy as
17 stone? Is that?
no, but it's as heavy as I've been since I was immobilized due to a car crash 25 years ago. So I am as fat as I've been for, I would say, 2 decades or more, which is a disgrace, really. So no more dessert, mate. And I might have to just get down, sugars out, just carb only, protein only from here on forward is the plan.
The only problem with that is, as I found, if you do get rid of your, well, like, I'm just going to be really frank here. If you get rid of like all carbohydrate, it really impacts your digestive system.
Yeah. And everything goes badly there. So I might, maybe some porridge will be something I'll continue with. But
No
yeah,
more
I've got to just
Viennese, no more Viennese truffles or whatever.
yeah, Saka Torta, all that. No, not happening. It's got to go. Got to go. All right, listen, welcome everybody to Brain Food Live on Air. We're bringing it to you every Friday, no fail. It's episode 367. We're flying through this series. It's already been a super exciting year in terms of our conversations. But I think the conversations are going to continue. We're going to try and bring in some depth to them as well. And today we're going to get into, a term that's been bothering me a little bit since I heard it a couple of years or so ago now, the human in the loop. And what I've been hearing from vendors is kind of this hand wavy, hey, listen, don't worry, it's all human in the loop. And that's the end of the story. And we're all saying, all right, that seems okay. But what does it actually mean? What does human in the loop actually mean? Have we tested it to the extreme, to the logic extreme of what we mean by human in the loop? And where does the balance of human judgment and AI recommendation lie? For instance, if those two things conflict, who has precedence? Do we have any kind of thinking behind that? Anyway, that is the topic of today. It should be a thoroughly interesting conversation. Obviously, myself and Adam Gordon do not have the intellectual horsepower to carry a conversation of this type. Hence, I've got the most intelligent panel I've ever assembled to come in and join us, which is going to be brilliant. So we'll bring those folks on in a bit. But it's been a pleasure to welcome back Adam Gordon to the show anyway, because it has been a little while since you've been in the co-pilot seat, mate. So great to see you back, Adam.
Thanks very much for having me. It's a real honor to be here. I think it's been about 2.5 years since it was last on.
Relegated.
I can't quite remember and I don't obviously watch when I'm not here, so I can't even remember the format. But
no, the only reason why you've been out is basically because I've been like traveling, and also I've been giving you a rest. To be honest, I mean, you've been on holiday as well, haven't you? You've had a couple of breaks and stuff. So
it's been a lot. I actually travelled for work for the first time last week.
Yeah,
for the
that's good news.
First time in probably 6 months.
Yeah, fantastic. I hope I hope whoever it was you met realized what an honor it is. So fantastic stuff. By the way, Adam, you might as well introduce yourself. Who are you? What it is you do? People might not know.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Adam. I've been in recruiting since the late 1900s. I was an employee for about 10 years in recruitment agency, in recruitment marketing, in management consulting at PwC, and I wasn't particularly good at any of those. So I started my own business in 2009, and I'm on my third, which is called Poetry, and it's hiring enablement technology. So very, very AI infused technology with humans out the loop mostly, and so I'm looking forward to talking about human in the loop.
Indeed. So Adam Gordon's LinkedIn just shared in the chat stream. Make sure you check it out. And Adam actually comes up with some very good stuff on LinkedIn as well, just in terms of his mini rants and posts. So make sure you follow him on there. Really very interesting. Folks, before we kick on any further, we do have to thank our sponsors for the show. Every week, a recruitment technology company comes in and says, you know what, we have to make sure these conversations continue. And this week, our sponsors is one of our favorites. It is our friends at MetaView. MetaView, of course, you might know them as the leading AI note taker. They're one of the first companies that kind of defined the category. I remember, Adam, you might remember Sal coming on the show really early on probably in the 200s, where we're at episode 200 or so. And they've been fantastic all the way through. Do check them out. I'll share it on the link. They have some mega news coming up. They were trying to squeeze it in time for this show, but they haven't been able to do it. It's going to be announced next week, but you've got to keep an eye on what's happening. Essentially, they found a way. They're going to launch essentially something called an NCP server. So MCP is something is a little bit technical, but it's basically a way in which AI technologies can communicate with other tools out there. So think of it as a protocol. And what this means in the next couple of days, next week going forward, you will start seeing and being able to get access to the value that MetaView provide using your standard consumer grade software. So if you prefer sitting in ChatGPT, Gemini, or whatever it might be, you might be able to get access to all of the information and data that you've got from MetaView without even having to log in. So this is, I think, one of the very exciting futures that we see, where technologies are essentially breaking out of the dashboard and starting to come in to your normal workflow. So imagine your normal workflow. Basically, everyone uses 3 apps. Technology sort of vendors are going to start moving into those spaces, and it means you don't have to redesign your flow. So really, really interesting. Check out metaview.ai and keep an eye on an announcement early next week, because you're going to see some really interesting things going in there. All right, that's it on the sponsor message. Let's review the newsletter real quick, Adam. We always do this, by the way, folks. Just a review on the happenings on brain food and the world of recruitment at large. What was interesting from last week, Adam?
Okay, so first off, I'm not sure if you're aware, but I do AI Watch on your recruiting brain food every week, and I can tell you that 7 of the 11 items of brain food were entirely about AI this week, which is probably on par with normal. Yeah, it's probably on par with normal, and it's probably about right considering what we've got going on in our industry. So let's start with your poll, because I always really enjoy the results that brain fooders give us. And I want to ask a question of you first, which is, do you spell the word cool with a K?
Did I spell skeptic wrong or something?
Well, you spelled skeptic with a K, so that's why I'm wondering if it was just like a bit of your cool factor. You were cool with a K that was coming in there.
I've always spelt it with a K. That is actually not the right spelling.
No, it's with a C. Anyway, look, 34% are AI optimists, but 56% are negative about AI, either skeptics or pessimists. So, I've got a couple of things I want to say about this. The first is, I can kind of understand why, because there is so much nonsense that is permeating our world right now from companies that are going, take a look at our AI agent, which is not an agent, and people saying, like, reinventing the wheel, going, hey, we've got this brilliant sourcing thing, it's AI sourcing, it's cool. You look at it and it's Intello from 2016. So I can appreciate some of that, but I've got to say, if some of it is, I'm a bit of a technophobe or a bit of a dinosaur when it comes to technology, stamp it out immediately. You can't have that. If you're under the age of 60 and you're working in talent acquisition, you can't have that today. You absolutely need to get with the script and understand how this works, how it can help you, and which parts of your role are potentially at threat today, so that you can seriously upskill on the areas that are not.
Yeah, by the way, folks, the poll sort of shows 43% as skeptical, and skeptical is basically saying, look, AI is important, but it's not all that. So it's going to be business as usual with a bit more speed. And I took that really as maybe a maturation of self-awareness, but it may not be accurate. It may be more significant than just that. but we don't know. But anyway, really interesting on the poll. I think people should still continue to speculate on it. Keep thinking, where you're at, and don't hold a fixed position is the main position I've got on the AI skeptic, optimists, pessimist position. I oscillate between all three, on a daily basis. Don't have that feeling of not having a committed position be bad, because I think it's generally better to be flexible with what you're looking at. Bob Pulver, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be aligned with you, our American friends, on skeptical and the spelling thereof. So I'm going to stick with the K. Okay, Adam Gordon, something else that was interesting last week.
Okay, so a guy called Zach Lloyd wrote about the rise of the agent builder, and the intention here is that there's people inside white-collar business functions whose job is to build and maintain AI agents rather than leaving automation fragmented and experimental and disconnected. And absolutely, I think that this is a job that is emerging in finance, in marketing, in talent, and in other areas. So this capability is going to become more highly valuable over the next few years. I do think there's a lot of nonsense and hype about this. So many blogs and things I've read recently about the rise of the talent engineer. But when you read what they're talking about, and it's just an extension of what TA Ops does, which is making technology work for automating recruiting. So that doesn't need to be blown up as a completely new thing. Incidentally, though, I've done a huge amount of study on AI agents in the last 6 months and agentic technology. And if we're going to have this role inside talent acquisition or TA Ops or wherever we put it, I totally agree with the value of the role. It's an engineer job. Your average recruiter is not going to be able to transition into doing that job. It's far more technical than most people think it is. AI agents are not humans. They are not workers. It is an automation of technology. And while they don't go on holiday and have babies and get sick, do the things that humans do, they do break like regularly. They are your needy. If you consider them as employees, they are among your neediest. And you're going to need, first of all, a technical person, which I'm not saying some people in talent acquisition couldn't transition into that. A lot of talent sourcing people have got very technical mindsets and can shift into that. Absolutely, I agree with that. In fact, I've got one in my team. I've got a software engineer in my team who was a recruiter for 15 years. But that person is almost certainly going to need to work alongside a recruitment process expert, because if it's somebody from outside of TA who's doing that job as an engineer, they don't know the right workflows, etc. So it's going to gather pace for sure. We are going to become more technical teams, definitely.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think anybody denies that the increase of technical literacy in every department is going to happen. We're all going to be operations. Sales is going to be sales operations, marketing is going to be marketing operations, recruitment is going to be recruitment operations, and people ops is already there. So that's definitely going to happen. Although I will challenge the idea that HR or TA people couldn't get into the engineering side of it, simply because this is so new that I wonder whether we're going to find people, unlikely types, may not come from a technical background, that might end up being super suitable for it. But we'll wait and see on that. Talent engineering, folks, is that a term that you're familiar with? Do you like it? Is it a talk we should do on Brain Food Live on air? Anyway, let me know in the comments. Right, one more, Adam, before we get on with this show.
I just want to reply to Joe's point. So Joe said that I think we shouldn't limit folks in our industry by saying you need to be an engineer. I mean, my question about that would be, or my point about that would be, having looked into a lot of this and having very technical people in my team who are former recruiters, I know the level of technical input required. It's not just you can't just build it with Lovable and it works. That's not a thing. You just can't do that. And there are talent. Some people absolutely can transition into that, but 90% of recruiters could not do that job. So I don't want to limit recruiters, but at the same time, I think I want to be a bit realistic about it. One more.
Right. Go on.
Okay. Anthropic's AI usage versus capability overlay that was doing the rounds over the last week or so. It was a great addition into the brain food. I think it looks quite scary around, the amount of AI that's being used right now versus the capability. But that doesn't mean that there's going to be overnight application of all this stuff. I think it's going to take years for those two to match, for there to be an overlap, a complete overlap in capability versus usage. And I'm hearing a lot of chat in the venture capital community right now about an impending plateau in terms of AI capability. I don't think AI's capability is never ending. Um, and I think to what we're doing just now is great, but clearly there's a lot more that can be done. It's going to take years for people to focus on it, and especially in talent, because quite frankly, we're just not a big enough addressable market. Like people are going to be much more focused on things like sales and finance and other much bigger business disciplines than recruiting. But very very interesting to see that the non-overlap in that.
Yeah, and there's lots of interesting things to glean from that Anthropic paper, and the main thing I took away from it was exactly that, like, the theoretical application of AI is very different from the stated application that we've observed, or the observed application, but that may change over time, and I think it will change in a way we're not entirely sure of how that looks. Perhaps not direct substitution, a person for AI, but simply a transition of how that job actually functions. But anyway, really, really interesting. Thanks for overview, Adam. Very good indeed. Let's get on with the show here. By the way, folks, I want to point everyone's direction to the poll on the right-hand side of your screen if you're watching this on Crowdcast. Haven't even done the sound checks, by the way. I hope everyone can hear me okay on LinkedIn and Crowdcast, by the way. Let me know if not. But if you're watching this on sort of Crowdcast, check out the poll on the right-hand side. This is one of the questions that really sparked one of the debates here. When hiring for your own team, how important is human intuition? And I've given you, I think, 5 options. I'll just read them out for the folks who are just listening rather than watching. First one is decisive, no hire if it doesn't feel right. Second one is important, we'd investigate further. Number 3 is not sure. Number 4 is not important. We ignore the human intuition, so you don't even factor that in. And number 5 is hostile. We aggressively eliminate human intuition in decision making. So in other words, you actually design a process where human intuition does not come into play. And this is with regards to your own team, by the way. So I'm not talking about hiring strategy for the organization. If you're a recruiter, you're hiring for your direct sort of people who are working in your team. How important is human intuition? Please cast your votes down there. Let's have a look-see. Okay, good stuff. Thank you, Rob, and thank you, everyone, for saying yes, no on sort of how we're listening in. Let's get on with the show. Adam, I want to get your view on this. Human judgment versus AI recommendation. Obviously, I mean, I think you actually, probably sit on both stools quite comfortably, in the sense that obviously you're a manager and a builder of teams, albeit small teams, but you've done it before several times, and you've got your own hiring philosophy on that, hiring rubric bricks and so on, and you've done it successfully. You've exited businesses successfully, so you've got to. I deeply respect people who've done that, not theoretically, oh, I had this idea, but you've built teams, built businesses, sold them. Brilliant. That is success in my view. And then on the other hand, you're obviously well into AI, sort of as a product maker as well. And there's lots of evidence to say AI may be superior to human judgment in many respects. So how do you sort of fit in with this when there's a conflict between two?
I think there's a couple of different elements we need to consider. One is like culturally, what is the right thing to do? Should we have AI making all decisions and operating autonomously? And in some countries, I think that is absolutely fine. For some types of jobs, I think that is absolutely fine. There's certain jobs where, quite frankly, the candidates don't want to talk to recruiters, right? So, human in the loop element to that, it could be deferred to the very end of the process, or perhaps not even at all. There's lots of jobs where, as I say, culturally, I'm talking about, first of all, there's lots of jobs where it's just not appropriate. You're not going to hire, purple squirrels and, people with a job title that begins with a C, without humans being in the loop on every single workflow. But then technologically, human in the loop, we talked about, like, 18 months ago, we were talking a lot about bias, and we were talking a lot about hallucinations, and we were talking a lot about AI not being just simply not being fit for purpose. That time's been and gone, and it is eminently more achievable to really harness AI so that it does exactly what you're saying without bias and without hallucinating or going wrong. Okay, so we're now in different times technologically, and that'll only keep improving as well. Human in the loop, I wonder about is it a defensive concept from people that don't want to be out of jobs? Maybe. Um, is it a trying to cling on to a past world where the human did everything? Maybe. But as I said, there's times where it's absolutely inappropriate for the human not to be in the loop. So that's my summary.
Yeah, a brilliant. I mean, you've come up with a fairly nuanced position there, Adam, which is kind of surprising to be fair. But that's really good. That's excellent.
Yes,
But
I don't have the IQ points to contribute actually, so it was very surprising.
that's the end of your contribution, mate. But no, really interesting. And I think there's a few things I'll pull out from that before I bring our crowd on. Firstly, maybe it's variable in where we apply the humanity. So in other words, there might be some jobs where we don't actually need a human heavy approach, because it's like, let's say it's seasonal work, where it is about availability. Here's the job, here's the contract, are you available? There's no sales involved there. It's really matching people's supply and demand. So that's an efficiency thing. Doesn't need a human being in there. Perhaps that's different for where you're headhunting someone, where you've identified them by name and you think, you know what, we want this person. He's a critical hire. That needs to be sort of a human heavy type approach. So there's nuances there. He mentioned something about seniority as well, like what is the fit, and maybe there is some sort of status thing going on there. So maybe lower status, you can go AI heavy; higher status, you got to go human heavy. It's uncomfortable to think about, but perhaps that's true. And yeah, some other things. Go on.
Just on that, I think it's to do with demand. I think it's to do with demand and supply. So, and you can just have a rubric for this, right? If these roles are critical, and the people are in demand, and we've got to roll out the red carpet, we need the human in the loop on most of the steps. If we don't,
right. Yeah. So there might be sort of an inbound, outbound type situation. So if you can handle the recruitment by advertising for it, then roll out an AI heavy, maybe a human zero approach. That should be okay. However, if you need to work hard to find your candidate, you got to lean into the human and make sure that is the primary thing. Okay, let's bring on some more intelligent people, Adam. We have one of them here, Dr. Richard Claydon. Richard, wonderful to see you. You're looking really well. I think the tropical air is suiting you. Richard, for the folks who don't know you, why don't you quickly introduce yourself, sir?
I will do my best. I never really know how to introduce myself, but I guess I'm a critical and analyst of leadership, more than anything else nowadays. I don't think leadership selection or development works very well, and I apply different models and practices in order to make it better.
Yeah, fantastic. And by the way, I would insist you follow Richard on LinkedIn because he does come out with some of the more intellectually stimulating posts out there. Always a contrarian, always going to get you someone's heart rate up. So make sure you follow him. Really good chat. We have Lucinda here as well. Wonderful to see you, Lucinda. Thank you so much for being patient. I know you've been emailing me and stuff, and I've been unable to respond. But great to see you on the show. Why don't you quickly introduce yourself, Lucinda? Who are you? What it is you do? Oh, I think there's a mute situation going on there. Oh, wonder why that is. Are you unmuted? Let me unmute you. I don't even know why you're muted in the first place. Go ahead, Lucinda, say something. No, you can't do it.
It's definitely on mute.
Yeah, I think so. I'm gonna unmute you, but I don't think I can. I think it might be one of those where you've got to refresh the thing, Lucinda, and come back if you can. Have a little bit of a wrestle with that. By the way, a quick word out for Crowdcast. This is an on-air bit of sort of product feedback. Part of the problem is that it defaults to mute when you join the call, and people don't know that. And I would say this is not Zoom. This is usually people on screen are being asked to speak. So there's no reason why that's the default needs to be toggled off. Anyway, Jane Moores, you're here. I hope you're not on mute. Jane, who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. Hey, I'm not on mute. So thank you. I'm super excited to be here. Last saw you in person in very hot Cape Town. And I train companies around the world to attract and select the best people for their teams. And I also help people with building their careers as a coach and to be really confident in their communication in those moments that it counts.
Yeah, brilliant. And Jane, by the way, is one of the best public speakers I've ever seen, even though she doesn't like me saying that. But your delivery and your humanity on stage is just so resonant with everyone who pays attention. So fantastic talk you delivered at Recruiters Unite. Okay, Lucinda, just a quick word for you. I've just invited you again. Give that a yes. Just make sure that you accept and unmute when you do that. Hopefully we'll get in. Okay, let's talk about this topic. AI, human in the loop, AI recommendation versus human judgment. My basic premise on all of this is that we have not thoroughly tested what it means to say human in the loop. We've just accepted it as a quick, okay, we have to use AI. We also don't want to relegate humans to nothing. So human in the loop seems like a rhetorical compromise. Let's just jump in forward and progress forward. And we haven't examined what it means by that. And I guess my problem is, are we ever going to veto the AI recommendation? I can see a situation where AI consistently recommends us to hire this person or make that decision. Under what basis would we ever reject that? Have we thought about this? And are we prepared to defend the human veto? Do we want the human to justify the veto? What if the human just says, I don't feel like it? Are we okay with that? What are our thoughts? Richard Clayton, any ideas?
I think I'd like to take that back to your question about intuitive intelligence, because we are relegating we risk relegating intuitive intelligence to nothing, which we've done for many years in other ways, and we kind of say rational intelligence is the way it is. We get enough data, we can make the right decision, blah blah blah. But actually, if you look at the deeper research, intuitive intelligence tends to lead to better decision making than rational intelligence. That pattern seeking that we can't actually verbalize and articulate, but it feels intuitively right. If you look at it in the research, it's much more accurate than rational decision making, where people have collected the data. It's not as trendy because it's not being written about by behavioral scientists in the States, but actually it seems to be far more effective. So if we eliminate intuitive intelligence in terms of making these kind of decisions, we say, well, you're a human, you're intuitive, it doesn't count, you're not being rational, which for Lucinda and Jane's case is tended to be pointed at women more than men, and has been historically, we actually eliminate something really important from this entire process. So I would argue that humans have to be in the loop, and there has to be a balance between what the AI treats as rational, which again is not necessarily all the data in the world, versus intuitive pattern seeking. And that's where good hiring will happen.
Yeah, really good. And by the way, Sean, a really good point. We're going to come to that in a second, but I want us to just all have our sort of statement on this. What do we feel about this sense of intuitive intelligence? Jane Moores, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, thank you. I think feeding on what you're saying, Richard, a very good friend of mine, an HR director, once said, I think it's really good when humans use intuition, if they have intuition. So I think like any other intelligence, if we look at the different types of intelligence, if you are someone who has intuitive intelligence, it can be really useful. But if you don't, and like Sean is saying in the chat, you're relying on something that is built more around a bias, and you're mistaking that for intuition, then I think that that's not helpful. So I suppose for me, it's whether you're using intuitive intelligence or whether you're using rational intelligence or whatever you're using. What is important is to bring curiosity into the mix. And so if there is something you're picking up, be it rationally or intuitively, you're asking why. Why is this coming up? I'm not assuming I'm right from the start. I'm digging deeper and I'm testing my assumptions to see if they align with the other evidence that comes out. So those are
So
my thoughts.
no, very interesting, James. So interesting. Is intuition versus bias, is that just a matter of competence? Like, is it literally a biased person is simply incompetent at intuition? This is just came.
I
That was a
think everyone
revelation
is
to me.
biased. Everyone is biased, hon. We're all human. And we all come
Yeah.
from different experiences, personalities, cultures. All of that contributes to the lenses that we see the world through. And so I think it's about us looking at, there's that old adage of the elephant, and somebody looks at it and says, I see the trunk, and someone else says, I see the tail. Neither is wrong. They're just looking at the animal from different perspectives. So I think it's so important
Yes.
to remain open-minded.
I love that analogy. Maybe intuition, rational intelligence, whatever types of intelligence it is, it's just like a lens that you use to go and see an elephant. You can't see the full picture of the animal. Lucinda,
Not
I think
saying
you're
that
here.
candidates are elephants.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to describe them as whatever, that's all good. Right, Lucinda, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear Lucinda.
Yes,
Brilliant.
great.
Quickly introduce yourself, Lucinda. Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, so I'm Lucy. I'm currently VP People for InsurTech. Worked as head of people in startups and scale-ups for the last 15 years. But before that, I did a PhD in developmental psychology.
Fantastic stuff. And you've had the chance to listen to some of the commentary here. I'd love to get your view on this idea of where does intuition sit as a decision making, as a source of decision making, and how do we? Isn't that just gut feel? I mean, is that? I mean, maybe if it is that bad then? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm actually I really agree a lot with Jane here. So I think intuition is definitely a skill, but it's also based on experience. So I do think it's a very important data point. And if you look at AI, and especially if you use it for screening, for example, it's mostly focused on patterns, right? And it's mostly focused on when is that the AI should be mostly right most of the time. But I think human development is also about individual equity. So that means that, for example, if we have a candidate that has a gap year, that for one person it could be a sign of burnout, for example, but for another it's a sign of resilience or caregiving. And I think those individual points, as a human, you're much better to provide that context and take that as information. While an AI, if you train it a certain way, might already have passed on his CV. So I think intuition is really important. And if that's gut or intuition, I'm not sure of the actual psychological terms here, but intuition is based on experience. So it's definitely something you train and you get better at.
Yeah, really good. Adam, Gordon, you want to say anything here?
Well, no, not in relation to that, because as you pointed out at the beginning, they're much smarter than I am. But I am wondering if what we're talking about here is really actually quite a narrow focus for what recruiters do. Recruiters do a vast amount of different tasks. I remember a few years ago seeing BT's like 72 different tasks that are applied in recruiting. I think what we're talking about here is specifically around assessment. It's around assessing the CVs coming in. It's around just creating your shortlist. It's around determining who to hire. Am I right or am I wrong about that?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think the application of AI is much broader. Obviously, there's efficiency gains. There's obviously optimizations you can do, interview scheduling and stuff. So there's an overarching, we can get better at the job. But here we're talking about making general assessment as to my vision on this is, look, what if AI is already making a bunch of recommendations, right? It's ordering candidates in terms of who is good or bad. Generally speaking, I think on a CV screen, probably going to be better than the average human. However, my question is like, what do we do when a human says no? Like, have we thought that through? And as Sean, he's been very good on the comments, by the way. Sean, we need to get you on screen at some point. If intuition is about spotting patterns, should you not be able to explain it? The socially correct answer would be, yeah, you should be able to explain it. But I'm kind of thinking, nah, you shouldn't, because if you're able to explain it, then it'll just turn into another data point, and AI would never make a different decision. So we might end up in a position where the human right of veto is that always going to be supreme over an AI recommendation, irrespective of your ability to explain it. And a lot of people probably would not agree with me to say it should be, but I think it's the only way to keep human primacy, basically. But there we go. Okay, any thoughts on that? By the way, let's just draw our attention to the poll results. If we hop on the right-hand side, we can see it here. When hiring for your own team, how important is intuition? Can I share this screen? I want to present the poll. Can I share my screen? I think I can. Oh, maybe I don't want to do that. Let's cancel. I don't know what I'm doing. It's fine. There's a point of competence right there, publicly exposed. All right, I'll just describe what it is.
It's endearing, It's endearing.
I hope so. At one point, it'll become annoying, and
it wouldn't be endearing when you saw what he was about to share. By the way,
yeah, that's it. Dodgy tabs on Chrome, but no. It was purely the results are very emphatic. When hiring for your own team, 79%, nearly 80% of people said it's important we would investigate further. So intuitively, we actually want intuition for our own teams, and yet, as I think Richard mentioned at the beginning, we've spent a lot of time relegating it away and marginalizing it. But how do we rehabilitate intuition without then going back into the bad old days of bias? Because I don't think anybody wants to have a situation where, all right, this geezer here is only going to hire people that look like him or her or whatever it will be, based purely on, I don't know, in-group identifiers or whatever it might be. We don't want that. So how do we kind of bring the intuition side back in? Any thoughts on this? Richard, go to you again.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the first point is to answer Sean's question, is that intuition, and the problem with pattern seeking is you can't verbalize it, you can't articulate it initially. You feel it, and you intuit it, but you can't verbalize it, and that's one of the challenges why intuitive intelligence is relegated, because people really struggle with this. And as Lucinda's in developmental psychology, that would be a leap between stages. You're beginning to see the patterns, but you're unable to explain it to others. So there's a clear element there that it's important, but it's lacking in the recruitment. We can kind of feel someone's the right person, but we can't say why. And maybe AI could help us probe why. If you're using it the right way, how do I actually say that? And I think Jane's point, yes, if you don't have the experience, it can be narrow bias. So if you don't actually have the experience of this is what looks good in this space, and that's what I'm looking for, you're just looking at a very technical set of elements in the hire. There can be serious problems with intuition being relegated to bias or becoming like bias. So we have to be very careful with that. But we are risking, I think, with AI. I don't know whether this is the case in recruitment, but certainly in some of the work that I've done with clients, people are being told, if you don't use AI, your job's at risk. So the whole of the process is just AI is doing 90% of the work, and a human has to judge, yes, this is good enough, or no, it's not. But the problem is, if the AI is doing 90% of the work, the next generation of humans won't have the capacity to intuit the quality of the work it's doing, because they've not done it themselves. So how do you make the judgment calls? Because they're not going to be developed. And I assume recruitment will have some of the same challenges. How do you make the intuitive judgment that this is the right person if you haven't had experience making judgment that this is the right person?
That is so interesting. Sorry, Adam, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, this is I've got a lot of friends who are lawyers, they're partners in law firms, and it's the consistent thing that they're asking is who are the partners of the future when they're not going to need any trainees in the in the short term. We have that same problem in the talent world, and it probably applies to all the different white collar roles. I think that Richard just explained that very well.
All right, so hang on. We're talking about repetition then. I mean, I'm not comfortable with Lucinda's view of experience necessarily, because it seems to me that intuition does that not need experience? Maybe there's something that can we go to innate sort of instincts there? But maybe I'm incorrect. But repetition is important, isn't it, Lucinda? In the sense that if you've done something 100 times, generally speaking, you develop some rules, maybe you not rationally, but you've developed some muscle memory as to know how to do that thing, and actually to get to a higher state of competence, you may never become rational. It may never go through your rational sort of consciousness. For instance, learning to walk. Once upon a time, all of us were not able to walk, and now most of us are able to walk, but we probably couldn't mechanically explain how we did that. You know what I mean? We through trial and error, lots of reps, we got there, and now it's in our subconscious, and probably you could describe it as some sort of intuition that we know how to put one step in front of the other. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here is intuition needs experience. Does that mean that if we're going to do it in a hiring context, the more junior people who are doing recruiting need to rely more on AI, and the more experienced the recruiter, we kind of give them more levity or more space to make a human judgment?
Yeah, it's a very I also see it back, especially in hiring younger people, is that they rely heavily on AI, and they kind of miss this whole opportunity of doing it themselves, making mistakes, see the consequences of their choices. So honestly, I do worry about that, especially for the newer generations. And in the end, I think in general, I'm more of an opinion to outsource lower level tasks to AI, so that we have more time to actually spend time on empathy, connecting with people, really understanding what, especially in the recruitment, what people are looking for, and to see if it's a right match. But if we keep outsourcing more kind of even strategic work and even like deep thinking work, I think that is a huge problem.
Yeah, strategy work, that's out the window already. I mean, it literally is. I mean, if you look at you ask any kind of AI model now to come up with a strategy, it's going to do better than you. And it's gonna cover more sort of things you would have missed without it. So I think the strategy side, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. There's no doubt about this. But we've not figured out how to do the climbing. And I do think there's going to be kind of skills atrophy in terms of our brain power. But anyway, that's not a problem companies are there to solve, right? We can't ask companies to solve this. This seems to be at a higher level of governance that needs to be arranging this, maybe beyond even countries. But obviously we're miles away from that at this point as well. Okay, Jane Moores, how do we sort of think about bringing this concept back in? Because we've had 20 years of data-driven decision making driven into us, and in fact, if you sort of polled anybody in TA and HR, say, are you committed to data-driven decision making, 100% of hands will go up. But I'm thinking, okay, different types of data though, that's never captured or never articulated, which is what intuition is, right? And yet we're going to end up making decisions by spreadsheet simply because our inability to articulate the intuition.
Yeah, I think it's there's so many layers in this topic, and it's honestly one that I see play out differently depending on which company I'm with. So for example, when I'm training hiring managers from different companies, in one company, well, firstly, in all of them, I think people will say they're committed to data-driven decision-making, but in reality, they go with their gut feel. But I think where I see the difference is what Richard was talking about in terms of the experience, and Lucinda, you as well. If you're making your decision based on experience, we also need to qualify that experience. Because I've been in companies where people say, yes, I've got lots of experience, but the HR or the newer people are saying, we don't want that. We don't want what you think is good is not actually good. what you think is a good outcome and the type of people that we want to hire. No, you have been biased. You have only been wanting to hire people who go to the same school as you. So if your experience is in a biased context, then your intuition and sense of intuition has been fed even unconsciously with that. So again, it's going back to, yes, I've got experience, but what kind of experience do I have? What quality of experience do I have? And I think, Richard, where you were talking about probing and finding out why, what's behind somebody, for me, what is so key there is how are we building trust? And that's where we do need human in the loop, not under the loop, because the way we build trust most effectively and remove bias is through storytelling. And we know that all the studies that were done at Princeton with Yuri Hasson, where he looked at the brain patterns of people who were listening when they were listening to stories. And there the brain patterns mirrored each other, and there was a physiological connection created between people. And that minimizes bias. So if you can create trust, then your bias immediately goes down. You're hearing a story, you're immediately connecting through the story, and you're not so focused on the other aspects that might be feeding your decision making. So those are the things that come up for me in that situation.
All right, I'm immediately kind of transporting into a future scenario here where essentially if we can create more trust relationships with candidates, let's say potential candidates, prospects, whatever, what have you, then perhaps we're going to be more able to rely on intuition, so to say, without the risk of it being biased. So bias may be more prominent where we don't have a trust relationship with each other. So in other words, a stranger comes in, that's when bias comes in initially, because we want to, as it maybe a maladaptive evolutionary response to say, you know what, this person's different, therefore problem, therefore whatever. But if we somehow build a trust relationship with this other and make a situation where there's that empathetic communication, then perhaps genuine intuition can come back in.
I think so, Hung. But I think still then you're seeing the real person. You're more likely to see the real person and less likely to see the guarded person or the persona they're projecting.
Right.
But you as the recruiter or hiring manager still needs to be someone who has good quality, intelligent intuition.
Right.
Because if you don't have that, it doesn't matter if you see the real person or not, you're still judging based on the wrong criteria.
All right, two things I want to say here. Adam, I want to bring you in a sec, but two things I want to bring to Lucinda here. Number one, this is brilliant, isn't it? But it's totally unscalable. So, all of these problems emerge because we're trying to scale a system. Of course we want to make friends with everyone. Of course we want to give a high human touch to everyone. Of course that will help with reducing bias. But you know what? You can't do that because we need to scale out quick. So how are we reaching a practical impediment with this is the first question. And do you have a potential feeling as to how we might solve that?
And that would be nice. Again, I think it very much depends also on the size of the company, especially again, if we talk about recruitment. And I've been working for a much earlier stage companies up to 200, 300 people. You'll see that the time you spend on interviewing and recruitment, and it's actually a lot of manual work, that is really high. And that's because you're still building a culture, right? You're still deciding who fits with that culture. How do we want to build it? What do we need for our company? So you're kind of building the foundations. And I think if you're growing as a company, it's already quite set. You can verbalize your culture a lot better. Candidates can a lot better understand it. So then obviously you can automate a lot of things, but it depends very much on the stage of the company. If I'm looking for a COO or a co-founder, well, there's no way that the computer will ever decide who's going to be that person, because the founder just wants to work with that person in a very good way and wants to connect with this person and even maybe want to make friends with this person. So I think it very much depends on the phase of the company. But I agree. I think the amount of time you spend on recruitment, especially if you don't automate a lot of things, it's not scalable. And it's not. But maybe you don't want to be that scalable that early in the process of that early.
what was that classic? I forget who said it, but it's kind of gone out of fashion. But sweat to small stuff, wasn't it? Kind of a classic Silicon Valley kind of mantra to say, actually, there's certain things you shouldn't want to scale.
Yeah.
You need to put human effort into it to get to that point. Adam
Yeah.
Gordon, sorry to interrupt you, man.
One of the things I was going to ask about was when Jane was talking, it occurred to me, can we not codify quite a lot of this? So if we think about strategic roles, you can't codify any type of assessment towards, like, would this CEO be better than that CEO? And there has to be some gut feel in that. However, if I am hiring fiber optic electricians, one, have they got experience? If so, how long? Two, do they have the necessary qualification? Three, have they got the right to work in our country or whatever? I mean, that it's not. You don't need to put any bias into any of this. This is just factual things. If somebody's doing an individual contributor job, so I wonder if, like, we should be thinking about it in terms of it, which job is a doer and which job is a strategist.
Yeah, I think that's fair, isn't it? So maybe job specific. Lucinda mentioned maybe it's kind of the stage of maturation of the organization as well. But job specificity, I think so. So in other words, if it's pretty transactional, there's a function, there's a task need to be done. Presumably, you could take off all of the cultural fit stuff. It's like, actually don't need. We just need this thing executed to go ahead and do that. But where there is maybe high collaboration intensity. So in other words, the person coming into the job, it's not just a function that is contributing to a team in a sort of a hard to define way. So this would be an early startup business. Maybe it's a core team in some way. We can't actually define every single bullet point of the job. It's there. This person needs to do something to help this organization grow or whatnot. Then that's where you got to bring in the context. You got to bring in the team fit. You got to bring in a lot of stuff that we've been spending a bit of time marginalizing ideologically. We've been pushing the cultural fit, team fit. That was like, had 18 months of like being cool until we thought, oh my goodness, it's bias. And we kicked it into the long grass to say, we can't say that because we end up recruiting the same people. So yeah, very, very difficult, very interesting, very challenging, isn't it? Okay. So let's move on to think about, in fact, no, folks, before I continue, let's take a mini break here, just because it's clearly this is a conversation we need to have a part 2, 3, and 4 on. But we're going to have to come off air in about 15 minutes. And as we do that, it will be a terrible shame if the people paying attention to this show who wanted to continue having this conversation were not able to do that. So please grab your LinkedIn URL, put it in the chat stream if you're watching this in Crowdcast. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, stick it in any comment thread that you're posting this on right now or you're watching this on right now. And then make sure you connect with everyone else who's doing the same. I'm pretty certain the only people watching this right now are deeply interested in this very interesting topic. Go ahead and continue that conversation off air and make sure we explore it. You don't need to come up with solutions at this point. I think just simply interacting and debating this issue is going to get us further down the track. So let's surface this up. Okay, that's good stuff. Moving to the practical steps, is there anything like what occurs to you in this? Because we are in a situation where, as Adam mentioned in chat, no stopping the AI train. We can say that AI recommendation systems are becoming more prominent, more prevalent. A friend of mine, Matt Buckland, who was going to join the show if he wasn't in Abu Dhabi and trying to get out of there on a last minute flight, he came out with something really interesting, which was to say, AI is already making decisions in a hidden way because it's making and surfacing up these recommendations and saying, hey, here are our top 10 candidates. Well, how do we know they're the top 10? We kind of don't. We're trusting the AI to be right. Maybe they are right, but maybe they're wrong. We actually don't know. And so they're already making the decision for us in the selection of it. I think it was, I forget, it was Jane or Lucinda mentioned the point, but basically as the more and more we delegate the decision making to AI, the less experience and reps we're getting in making judgments. Therefore, actually, it makes more sense to delegate to AI because we're going to get worse at judgments. And so we're generating a flywheel where actually we're pushing all of the decision making to artificial intelligence. And actually, do we want to do that when we're still in the business of building human organizations? So what do we do about this? Richard Clayton.
Okay, so you guys have given me some of my trigger words over the last 20 minutes.
Triggered Richard. This is terrible. Is the world prepared?
Hiring for empathy, hiring for cultural fit, stuff like that. And I think Adam's point was, when he said, look, you're hiring for technical skills. And I do agree that bias gets in the way. If you're talking about empathy and cultural fit, you're hiring for such fuzzy aspects of the work that, of course, bias gets in the way. You can't be intuitive about concepts that are so fuzzy that you just can't make rational or intuitive decisions about it. It's a real challenge. So I would argue that what I think Adam was talking about is something that I would call discipline delivery or operational delivery. That they're very simple technical skills. Make sure they're in a hire. But you've got to hire for other things. If you're hiring at higher levels, or you're hiring somebody that you think has got capacity to move up the organizational system, and if you're talking empathy, if you're talking trust, if you're talking cultural fit, you're not asking the right questions. The right questions become centrally important. So if AI is amplifying these elements because that's what it's being fed, then it makes things significantly worse. If it's helping you pick, right, does this person have the capacity to connect execution to strategy? How can they do that? Does this person show the capacity to be adaptive in complex problems? How do they do that? Can this person build relationships within teams and beyond teams and influence other people in positions of power? How do they do that? If you can make it really, really concrete, which goes into my space, the way I introduce myself, I have a real problem with the language of leadership development, which is the empathy language, the culture language. It's too fuzzy. There's no evidence that actually it creates better leaders. Can you put the right evidence into the AI at all ends, which means it spits out candidates that you can ask structured interview questions to and make intuitive judgments of their answers? That's what I would be looking for.
Very good, Richard. Jane, your thoughts on this? Like, what's the next steps for us, really?
I think I want to ask Adam a question, if I can, because Adam, you said that there are certain processes where you think humans can be under the loop, and it depends on the role and it depends on the culture. And I hear Richard now talking about culture. So please, I'm really curious to understand. The role probably is the one you're talking about, where it's literally, how much experience do you have in fiber optics or whatever the case may be. But in what cultures should humans be under the loop and not in the loop?
Well, for example, Amazon have automated the entire process of hiring drivers in certain countries, including in Germany, and that's absolutely fine with the drivers and it's fine with Amazon. So that's a good example of one of those.
So you mean company culture? You're not talking about cultures of...
It could be company culture. It could be company culture. It could be region. It could be the profession. There's a whole variety of different aspects to that. But yeah, I mean, that's an example where it doesn't seem that. And was it DHL? I think they've done the same again in driver recruitment. Your assessment is your first day. It's the same thing. You turn up, you do your first day, and at the end of day one, you get told if you're actually getting the job or not. So, so you're not going to do that. You're not going to do that in your, marketing strategy team. There's certain.
Okay. So, in terms of next steps, I mean, I think for me, it's a focus on making sure we're really thinking about what is information that needs to be gathered and assessed, and for what purpose. And what is what the human can contribute to the job and needs to contribute to the role and to the culture. And why is that important? And how are we going to gather that information and assess it? And for me, that loops back to trust, because if you don't get the real person in front of you who's willing to drop their guard and talk about their struggles and really open up and be vulnerable, then you're going to continue to assess information. And I think a person is not going to drop their guard and be real and build trust with AI in the way that they will with humans, just because of how we're designed. And I mean, I don't know what will happen in the future. I'm not a futurist. But at the moment, that trust is still so key for me.
Yeah, and we're trust. Where does the trust belong? Like, we are seeing humans trust AI, but we also recoil from that trust being exposed to someone. Like, did anyone read a couple of weeks ago? Wasn't it? There was some like mini scandal in the recruitment industry where one recruiter asked for the chat history of the candidates ChatGPT in order to try and get a better feel for who they were. And I was thinking, hang on. Is that a valid way to assess the person? I thought probably is, but obviously, why not? But everyone was outraged. I was outraged.
Oh my goodness.
Right? Yeah, everyone would refuse to do that. But at the same time, it's like, okay, are we at the point where we don't want some information and we want to actually sort of ring fence certain types of information away from the decision making process?
But for me, that's yeah. I mean, that for me almost reminds me of the hiring manager who thought that they had this inbuilt ability to conduct a psychometric assessment on someone by looking at their car boot. And just by looking at that, they can tell. So again, where in the world did you decide that looking at somebody's ChatGPT history actually gives you, now you've got these insights? So I think that bothers me as well.
I'm pleased to say that I've annoyed Jane, which I didn't think was possible. But she's such a nice lady. But we're gonna have to. I'm gonna talk about hiring manager heuristics in another show, because I actually love that as a topic, even though I know it triggers so many people. But hiring managers often have heuristics, particularly CEOs, actually, where they say, you know what, I want to look at how this person treats the secretary. If the person isn't, first name terms or whatever, he's out. And it's like, okay, everyone freaks out. All the TA, HR freak out. But hang on, this person's built $1 billion business or whatever. So does that person not know more about building successful social organizations than someone who's employed to be a process person? So we've got some uncomfortable truths to uncover, but we're going to carry on that journey on another show. We have to ask Lucinda what the next steps are, really. How do you? I mean, you're the only one here as in the operating role as a head of people right now, VP of people, Lucy. So how are you going to try and get all of this? Okay, we want to be fair, data driven, etc., but we also don't want to relegate intuition into the long grass, when in fact that's a very human way of making a decision.
Yeah, so for me, if I go back a little bit in a discussion, for me, it is very much to what extent you can explain your intuition. And I do really think the more experience you have, the better you can explain your decisions on something. So I think, and it's also actually something you can practice, but asking yourself the right questions and having enough self-insight to know what you're feeling and how it can be explained. So I think that one is really important. I think going forward, I think like information or whatever is decided, I think it's a good thing to think about who owns the decision ultimately. And I also know in psychology, when people feel they're just following a system, they experience a drop in moral agency. So they will just blame the AI when the wrong choice is made. And we're just not ready for that yet. So we need to take ownership and we need to take responsibility for whatever the AI spits out, as long as we're not fully able to trust the system, let's say. So I think I cannot look 20 years in the future, but at this moment, this is still very much needed.
I think that's an important point. Nobody gets fired for hiring McKinsey. So perhaps nobody will get fired for hiring an AI recommended employee.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is the central problem. I think we end up refusing the veto, basically, because there's a social cost to a veto and there's a business risk to a veto, and we're just going to end up just being a rubber stamp to HR, to the AI recommendation, which I think is ultimately a giving up of human executive authority, which I think always needs to be primary over AI, even if it is wrong. And I think that's the thing that I want to try and explore a bit more. But folks, we have basically come to the end of this particular show. Clearly, we have more to talk about. Folks, if you want us to do a part 2 of this panel, and maybe some others in the commentary, Master, Steve, people have come in with some brilliant comments. If you want us to do another part 2 on this, I want to talk about how you measure intuition. So another step 2, obvious step 2 is this: if we accept that human intuition is good and valuable, how do we assess for it? How do we actually assess for intuition at an interview? Is there a way to do that? Maybe a logical part 2. But folks, let me know in the comments if you want us to run this. But we have to let our wonderful panelists go. Richard, he needs to go to sleep. Jane needs to enjoy the sun. Lucy needs to kind of get on for a weekend, I guess. So thank you so much for joining, everyone. You've been absolutely wonderful. I can say without question, this has been my favorite show of the year so far.
Wow.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Lucinda.
Thank you, Young. Thank you, Adam.
And folks, thank you for joining, everyone. I think it's been great. I hope you've enjoyed the show. We're going to keep rolling forward with Brain Food Live. Next week is another amazing show, by the way. We're going to be talking LinkedIn content intelligence. We all want to get bigger as influencers on LinkedIn. We're all failing because we don't know how LinkedIn works anymore. However, David Ano, in fact, has done some amazing research on how it actually works, factoring in things like your reach, your connections, your network value, and how, what kind of posting schedule, what kind of content seems to be operating. So we're going to bring him on to present his research, and we're also going to bring in a panelist of LinkedIn influencer builders. So these are people that actually have professional experience of growing LinkedIn accounts for themselves and for others. And they're going to just come in and help me debate this out with David. So make sure you join that show, folks. It's open and it's available to register. Follow the channel if you're watching this on Crowdcast. I do this every week, sometimes twice weekly. If you're watching this on any of the LinkedIns, hover to my page. Follow the page there. It also is simultaneously broadcast on my LinkedIn. Okay, that's it. See you next time. Okay, Adam, thanks for that, mate.
I've got a quick question for you.
Oh, no.
This is not about you, me, any of our guests.
I'm kind of terrified, mate.
Have we not overcomplicated recruitment enough now? It feels to me like anybody outside of recruitment would listen to the stuff that we talk about every week on this show, and in a whole variety of communities and things, and they would be like, "Why are you overcomplicating all of that?" I just wonder whether we need to simplify the fucking whole thing.
Well, it kind of goes back to that, doesn't it? This is why I've got greatest respect for the owner manager business. Because the owner manager, you've been owner manager, I've been owner manager. The hiring is the highest stakes ever, right? Because it's like your business and you're bringing this person in. They can sink your company. They can absolutely ruin the performance. You're highly scrutinizing everything. And the person that you're bringing in there has to be a gut feel there. There has to be some sense that, I just don't feel it with this person. And for some reason, we're condemning it straight away, where I'm thinking, actually, you got to pay attention to that, even if they're wrong. It's their business. And maybe we wander into territory where it's a bigger enterprise and you've got, everyone's an employee rather than an owner of the business. Perhaps you've got different sort of jurisdictions there. But yeah, maybe it comes down to, okay, the gut feel, do I like the individual, Anyway, right, Adam,
Cool.
I've got to let you go. What are you doing this weekend, mate? Hang on.
Well, it's my wife's.
It's your birthday?
Going out. No, it wasn't. It was a couple of months ago, but she's going out with her friends to celebrate that tomorrow, and then it's Mother's Day on Sunday. So basically,
oh right, Christ,
it's like her weekend, and I'm going to be doing all the tasks.
You've got to sort the shed out.
Rugby, right? Rugby. It's tomorrow. I mean,
massive.
England are going to get taken to the sword by France, so it doesn't even matter if Scotland beats Ireland or not.
Is Scotland? This is the best ever moment for Scotland, isn't it? Really?
Well, yeah. I mean, we're currently second place, but I mean, we could get beaten by Ireland, right? We could get beaten by Ireland, and I've never wanted England to win more. In fact, I've never wanted England to win ever until tomorrow. But that's not going to happen. So even if we beat Ireland, we're not going to win. We'll come second. Which would
fair
be
enough.
Still very cool.
Yeah, brilliant. It's been a brilliant moment, and it needs sometimes the big beast to fall over and have a terrible tournament for everyone else to basically have an exciting thing. There's been some spectacular rugby being played. All right, listen. Now I've got to go. Actually, so I've got to let you go. See you later.
Bye.
Bye. All right.